Hey everybody, this is Ed Majeski of Friday Night Vinyl. Going to do a little snippet here. My top 10 favorite Rolling Stones albums, studio albums, that is. and The Rolling Stones had 30 studio albums, so there'll be a lot of other groups that we're going to do. We're probably going to be just doing top 5 because they don't have this many albums. Anyway, first thing, if you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, then click the link below and subscribe now. Also, feel free to write in your comments. We'll answer back. We'll keep an eye, a look on that. And the thing here is that these are my favorite. I'm not like trying to analyze the Rolling Stones and be critical here and say, hey, this one and this one. So when you look at it, remember, it's my top 10 favorites, and I'll kind of try to give you a reason, and whether you agree or not, we can discuss that below in the comment section. So again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and here we go. So I'm going to start off with a couple honorable mentions, because if you've watched the show, you know I break all my own rules. So the first honorable mention would be Bridges to Babylon. This was released in the 90s, I think 94, and it had like 6 really good songs on it. And the thing is, we were in the CD era, and I think there's a lot of albums by artists during that time who were more from the classic rock era who had a kind of really good or almost great album during that time, but they were filling the tracks up with like 74 minutes of music, and most of the time, our albums when we were younger were like 39 minutes, 37 minutes, in 35 to 40 minute range. So I'm going to put that in an honorable mention. Another honorable mention here real quick is Lonesome in Blue. And the reason why this is I always was hoping for an album where Mick kind of like picked up the harmonica more and they did some blues stuff. And what I really wanted for the album was for them to go over some of their old blues stuff they did back in the early 60s and redo it with better production and everything. They still gave me some good blues stuff, and I really enjoy this album. Next up on the honorable mention list, and there's only one more on the honorable mention list, so don't think I'm going to go through all 30 albums and have 20 on my honorable mention list. Steel Wheels. Steel Wheels came out in '89. This was after the Rolling Stones had sort of a hiatus, sort of like everybody thought they were never going to be anymore. And this album really has a lot of good tracks, Mixed Emotions. It has Sad, 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 Rockin' a Hard Place, Can't Be Seen With You, Hold On to Your Hat, Hearts for Sale, Continental Drift, which I really enjoyed. It was a different type of Stone song, and I think they were using the pipes of Jarawaka or something like that Brian Jones did some recording with before Brian Jones passed away. Last but not least on my honorable mention list, and with the 3D cover, as you can see their heads are, let's see if we put it up here and you can actually see that their heads are turning and stuff like that. And in this 3D cover here, all the Beatles can be found. There's John Lennon, George Harrison, Ringo and Paul, if you look close enough. But this album, while I can see when it was initially released all the fuss, because this took the Stones away from being like pop and all that, and this was also their answer to Sgt. Pepper. And no, it was not as good, but you had songs on here like 2,000 Light Years from Home and She's a Rainbow, which are great songs, and they were way off the beaten trail of what the Stones were doing at the time and what they went on to do. And that's why this album, while some of it's a little 2000 Man's another great song, which was actually covered by Lenny's favorite band, Kiss. But my favorite deep track, probably in my top 2, is Citadel on this, because that song just really kicks. So anyway, let's move on to my top 10. And this is where you're going to disagree or agree. But again, put your comments below, and I'll keep an eye on it and respond back, and it'll be good. So, coming in at number 10 for me is Tattoo You. It was released in 1981. I'm not going to have all the specific release dates for these albums. I'm going to try my best from memory, but I'm not trying to go off of a script here. And I mean, obviously, this had Start Me Up, Hang Fire, a little TNA, which is one of Keith Richards' best solo songs, Black Limousine, Neighbors, Waiting on a Friend, Tops Heaven, and I just thought, you know, this this was an excellent album, and you have to look at it as 81. This is 16 years after the band, no, 17 years after the band started. And if you look at a lot of bands today, or even like from the 90s, add 17 years to them and see if they release something as good as this in their 17th, 18th, or 19th year. Next up, and this is probably going to be the shocker for many, um, for me, is Exile on Main Street. And I understand that this album gets critically acclaimed as the greatest Rolling Stones album ever, or some go over the top and say the greatest album ever. Well, no, I think it's probably the Rolling Stones' greatest album ever. I'm going to put this part down and pull up the sleeves and go, the tracks on here: Rocks Off, Rip This Joint, great. Tumbling Dice, big hit, Sweet Virginia, and I'm just doing the notables. Happy, All Down the Line, and one of my favorite deep tracks also is Soul Survivor. I like this album, and I liked all the blues areas that they went to on this album. But there'll be reasoning later why I have this album here. And again, if this was a single album, this probably would be a hard one to not have in like my top three. But the other things on here, while I appreciate them and I like them because I'm a big major blues fan, I have to put this album at number 9. Coming in at number 8 for me, the Rolling Stones' Black and Blue. Now, as a kid, I think this album came out in '76. As a kid, when I first listened to this, first off, the hit off this album was Daddy, You're a Fool to Cry. And I hated that song. And it was crap in my eyes. And this album explored some other areas. Let me put this down and read the liner notes here. And these were songs there were 2 songs on this album that I liked instantly, and everything else took a little bit of time. And over the period of time, they grew on me. So we'll go here. Hot Stuff. Didn't really like it at first. Like it more now. Hand of Fate was one of the songs that said, "Ooh, this is a really good one." So I liked that off the bat. Cherry O Baby, no, didn't like it. But I also knew they were starting to explore some reggae, which Bob Marley and all that stuff. So I was still good with that today. Memory Motel, that's just a great song. I guess because the younger me wasn't into really slower ballady things, I bypassed on this. But Memory Motel is a classic, in my opinion. The other side, Hey Negrita, again, it was something that was a little bit rough and different, but I grew to like it. Melody, same type of deal. Fool to Cry, well, I've already talked about that. And Crazy Mama, Hand of Fate were the 2 songs that I wore out while I skipped everything else until years later when I went back and I was like, this is a lot better than I originally thought it was. Okay, so I did tell you I'm a Rolling Stones fan, and I've been a Rolling Stones fan since 1970. So again, this is going to probably surprise many when they see this next album that I'm going to put up as my number 7. And that is, and look at how it doesn't work here. Some Girls, and this is actually the original. As you can see, it has, maybe if I do this, it has all the women that the Rolling Stones never asked permission to be on, and then they had to change it to like Under Construction and stuff like that. So for me, I loved the Rolling Stones, and when I was in school, Rolling Stones, everybody was liking Elton John and some more poppier stuff. And this album came out, and this kind of fit in with the line with the things that the other kids were liking. I mean, Miss You, Before They Make Me Run, When the Whip Comes Down, Faraway Eyes, Respectable Imagination, Just My Imagination, Shattered, Beast of Burden, Before They Make Me Run, if I didn't say that, Faraway Eyes. This is a great album. So 2 things on this. I like the more raw, Rolling Stones, as you will eventually find out as this list progresses. I understand the greatness of this album, and there isn't really a bad song on this. The other thing about being around during that time is they overplayed the crap out of this. Now, some girls, that song will never get old for me because of the lyrics are over the top. And Far Away Eyes I've always enjoyed because of the sarcasm in the song. But it just was played so much. And as a Rolling Stones fan, hey, that was cool. Everyone was starting to get into the Rolling Stones. So, that's my number 7. My number 6 is It's Only Rock and Roll. And It's Only Rock and Roll, I'll just pull this up because I got to pull out the sleeve. So for some of you who had the album and don't anymore and have it on CD, this was the sleeve. I took the records out of all these because I wouldn't want to be doing this and have something fall and crack. So, obviously the first 3 tracks are amazing. If You Can't Rock Me, Ain't Too Proud to Beg, which is a cover by the Temptations, and It's Only Rock and Roll. Till the next time till the next time we say goodbye was also a video they released when they did the Rolling Stones. Back then did videos and released them on like Don Kirshner's rock concert. So Time Waits for Another One's a good one. And again, this is another album where the deep tracks are really interesting and go in unusual places. And my favorite era of the Rolling Stones was the Mick Taylor era. So you had Luxury Dance Little Sister, If You Really Want to Be My Friend, which was a really good like rhythm and blues type of song. Short and Curly's, it's okay. And Fingerprint File, which is it's just a crazy off the beaten trail Stones type of song, and it's a great deep track. So let's move on. So the next album, which is number 5 on my list, is and this one because of the color, it's the Rolling Stones Goat's Head Soup. And so the interesting thing was that this really was going to be the original cover with the Rolling Stones written over here and Goat's Head Soup over here. This is an album that grew on me and grew on me and grew on me just over time. Now, one of the things I always called this album, first off, there's a song on this album called Winter, and the irony of it is I call this my Wintertime Rolling Stones album. It's just an album on a snowy, cold, blustery day or whatever. You just want to sit inside and kick back. It's this album. I mean, there are some upbeat songs on here. Well, you had the 2 hits, Heartbreaker and Angie, but you also had Silver Train, which was an upbeat song, and of course Star Star, because they couldn't call the song Starfucker. But yes, that's really what the song is. But songs like Hide Your Love, Winter, Can You Hear the Music, Dancing with Mr. D, 100 Years Ago, Coming Down Again. It's just a really good, laid-back Stones album. It just grew on me, and again, the Stones were great for summertime, all out. This album here, and so this was also like the sleeve back then. Billy Preston played on it, Nicky Hopkins, Ian Stewart, and so we'll put that one there. That was my number 5. Now, coming in at number 4, and that would be Let It Bleed. Let It Bleed has Gimme Shelter on it, Love in Vain, Live With Me, obviously the title track, Let It Bleed, You Got the Silver, a Stones classic, Monkey Man, another Stones classic, You Can't Always Get What You Want, and of course, the lesser version of Midnight Rambler, because I don't think anybody listens to or really gets the airplay anymore of the studio version of Midnight Rambler, because the live version of Get Your Yayas Out of Midnight Rambler is just miles above this. Actually, probably when this is done, I might just go put on the studio version of Midnight Rambler just to listen to it again, because I can't tell you the last time I even cared about this version. But this again, this was at the in-between where Brian Jones was sort of out of the band and they were filling in bits and pieces here. I don't know how much exactly Brian Jones actually played on this, and it was also where Mick Taylor era actually started to begin. And again, I'm not sure. I don't think Mick Taylor played on this album at all. So let's go to my number 3. My number 3 goes back to 1965, and it's the Rolling Stones' Out of Our Heads. And this, to me, this album will never grow old. And the interesting thing is, so when I was in Scotland 2 years ago, I picked this up, and this is the English version of Out of Our Heads, which is the cover for the American version of December's Children. And this is missing some songs that are on here. So Mercy Mercy and Hitchhike start off side 1, and they're two great blues songs. Then we're fit in with one of the Stones' first originals, The Last Time. This album also has Satisfaction on it, Cry to Me, Play with Fire, I'm Alright, Good Times, That's How Strong My Love Is, The Sputtering and Fly. And again, this is really early Stones. Big hits, obviously, Last Time and Satisfaction and Play with Fire, but Mercy Mercy and Hitchhike are great songs, and the other stuff is more like raw bluesy kind of stuff that they did. So that's why I really like this. So now we're getting to my number 2, and there's a couple albums that you haven't heard yet, so, or however you mentioned, so I'm sure you're wondering which is which. And they sort of play off of each other. And that would be number 2 is Sticky Fingers. Sticky Fingers, well, and I'll pull up the sleeve again so I can conveniently read the songs off of here. Sticky Fingers had the big songs, Brown Sugar, and Wild Horses. It had the song that I wouldn't say it was a type of a hit, but we all know it, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, and another one, Bitch. And of course, what I guess grew to be a hit, it wasn't, but over time, Dead Flowers. And the thing about this album, which is going to kind of coincide with the next album, this was during the Mick Taylor era. There was a lot of raw, emotional blues material in here. Sister Morphine, Sway, Moonlight Mile, I Got the Blues, You Gotta Move. Which You Gotta Move I would probably put obviously in the reggae kind of thing. But the thing about this album was it had some hits, but the hits were amazing. And the other thing also is the overall feel of the album is raw. It wasn't like everything on this album is designed to be a pop hit. Which takes me to my number 1 all-time favorite Rolling Stones album. And that's going to be Beggar's Banquet. And many of you know it by this cover, because the Rolling Stones wanted this to be the cover in 1967, I believe. And the record label was like, this is a little too over the top. So it just came out like this. But this album had Sympathy for the Devil on it. It also had Street Fighting Man. And then you have songs that you had No Expectations, Dear Doctor, Parachute Woman, Jigsaw Puzzle, Prodigal Son, Stray Cat Blues, which I actually like this version better than the Get Your Yayas version, Factory Girl, and Soul to the Earth. And this album to me, and this was during the Brian Jones era, and again, it was getting near where there were issues. So I'm not really sure. I think he still played a lot on this album. But Beggar's Banquet is just, to me, if you want to take an album that's just raw Stones, take away the pop, take away anything that was trying to be a hit, and just, you don't, in 1967, you don't write a song called Sympathy for the Devil and say, hey, this is going to be a hit. But yeah, so that's it. So if you got this far, and I hope you did, please, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit like on the video, and make some comments, and be glad to go back and forth with you. You may disagree on some things and agree on others, and that's fine, because it's art. It's subjectable. It's so. Anyway, thank you very much, and hopefully you will be here to watch the next video that we put out on another band, and maybe we'll probably be doing top fives. Not too many bands have 30 studio albums out, so we don't. If the band is 17 and we're doing the top 10, we're probably going to be bringing in some crappy albums. So anyway, thank you, take care, and talk to you soon.